It's Wizards versus Lesbians, a podcast for your ears. Hello and welcome to Wizards versus Lesbians. My name is Isaac.
I'm Alexis.
And today we have a guest. Please introduce yourself, guest.
Hello, I'm Elle, and I really like this particular visual novel.
Indeed. And the visual novel that we are talking about today is We Know the Devil, written by AVB and released by her game company, which is called...
Worst Girls Games.
That sounds just about right. Very thematically appropriate. So
Yes.
yeah, we got a request to cover Heaven Will Be Mine or We Know the Devil, and we went with this one because it is shorter.
Much more approachable.
But they definitely have...
ways.
It is more approachable. They definitely have similar themes, but we might do a few digressions into Heaven Will Be Mine for comparative reasons later on.
Have you both played it?
No, I have not played it, so I hope we don't get too many digressions into it.
All right, we will not be doing much
Sorry.
of digressing into.
I would
Heaven Will Be
love.
Mine.
I would love to play it, and someday I will have time to do things again.
So it's traditional for the guest to do the plot. Elle, what happens in this game?
3 sad kids go to kind of not really conversion camp and meet the devil. Without spoilers.
I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yep, I recall it was originally pitched.
Kids in question
Are all named after Sailor Senshi.
Yes, they are all named after Sailor Scouts.
or planets.
Or planets, but
yes,
it's
they are.
really obviously Sailor Scouts. Come on.
Well, we're gonna have to reconnoiter on that one, because I don't know the Sailor Moon lore, so you're gonna have to tell me what the character resonances are innate of.
Isaac, are you telling me you didn't pay attention in college when I info dumped all the Sailor Moon lore at you? I'm shocked and hurt.
It was 20 plus years ago. I remember you showed me the Sailor Moon R movie with the weirdly horny tentacle crucifixion.
That's Sailor Moon.
To be fair, weirdly horny tentacle crucifixion describes a lot of anime, especially from the 90s.
This is true.
From like the 80s and 90s.
This is true. Andy Kihara was involved.
Okay, so 3 girls, or three kids, named after either planets or Sailor Scouts, go to Jesus Camp and meet the devil. And I remember what the one thing I remembered about this game, because I bought it when it came out and then did not play it until like 2 weeks ago when whenever it was that we decided to schedule the podcast. But I still remember from the pitch that it was very much, you get to choose. 2 will be a couple and 1 will die.
Not die, but yeah. The idea that the group of 3 fundamentally leads to isolation. Yeah.
Right, but no, I remember this being like part of the way the game was pitched on Twitter way back when. Was that was that one of the you get to choose which one will die.
You can be forgiven for leaving the game thinking that one of them is dead at the end of each of the 3 possible routes.
They all make it clear that dead is not quite what's happened there. Jupiter's asleep, Venus is smoking.
Yes. Somebody is very wet. But anyway.
Neptune is...
Yeah. But regardless, there may or may not be a secret way to make everybody have a happy ending for a certain value of happy ending. But for that, we would need to head to the spoiler zone. But before that, are there lesbians in this game?
Yes.
Yes, there are. Good.
There are at least 2 lesbians.
And wizards. Are there wizards in
Yes.
this game?
Well, there's the devil, and there's also Jesus Camp
God.
Counselor.
God is certainly...
And I guess also God.
God is kind of a wizard, but also kind of... Well, I guess that's spoilers, but Not what I would call a wizard in the traditional sense.
Jesus Camp Counselor, absolutely wizard type. The devil, ambiguous, but can still, be considered wizard adjacent. God, also ambiguous, but at least somewhat wizard adjacent in this.
Yeah, I would actually be comfortable calling this mainline Wizard versus Lesbians, and I think that we're only doing it as a bonus episode because it's a visual novel.
I don't even think it has to be a bonus episode, except that we had a really good guest enthusiast, so...
Exactly.
Wow, thanks. I am glad to hear your enthusiasm for my enthusiasm. Let's hope that pans out.
Generally, the main qualification for being a guest expert is to be really enthusiastic about the material.
Indeed.
Or, I guess, if you really hated it, but you still wanted us to discuss it, that would also work. Anyway, so why should you play this game, read this visual novel? I was going to start by saying it is, even if you don't have a lot of time for video games, it is really short. I played through every ending in like an hour.
Yes, and the developers have been kind enough to include a fast forward button so that you can get through the bits that you've seen before very quickly.
Yes.
Which is just chef's kiss. Excellent accessibility there for those of us with short attention spans.
Yes, and the forwarding the forwarding interface is well done. Like it really functions as a fast forward.
It's also good.
Well, oh yeah, it's also good.
There's that.
I mean, I didn't know if you wanted to mention
But like,
that.
there's lots of very good games I have not played.
Elle, why should a person play this video game?
It's good. It's really good. It hit me precisely. It's targeted toward me in like 4 or 5 different ways, like hyper specifically, and in all of those ways, it hit home. It's also really good for replaying because you're naturally going to be replaying it as you go through trying to get different endings, and a lot of the scenes are. I was talking about it with a friend who tried to play it once, kind of preparing for this, and they were like, well, this is a lot of people talking about something, but they're not talking about it. And I was like, yes, exactly, that's why I love it.
This is also a dynamic in this episode as we figure out how much we want to disclose of our personal resonances with the text. Do we figure it out? You bet.
Almost every scene, once you know what's actually going on, makes much more sense to someone who doesn't understand it the first round through, and you have the wonderful feeling of, oh god, that horrible emotional knot between these 2 sad fucked up teens is really, making itself known here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even with the fast forward button, there's a lot of times when I with my extremely short attention span, still chose not to use the fast forward button because I was like, actually, I want to reread that conversation in light of having just played through the entire game. So it was good on the reread.
I would say as to why you play this game, as Elle said, it is probably going to be targeted toward you if you are in any way young and queer.
If you have adverse experiences with Christianity, especially.
I was going to say, I think this is really the game for people who are young and queer and have some trauma from Christianity, which is a lot of young queer people today. But
I have a little bit of insight on this, actually. I was listening to a podcast that the other creator did, Max Schwartz. Apparently, kids these days don't quite have the paint thinner stuff doesn't get across, right? Or they're like, are they drinking literal paint thinner?
Right. Nobody...
Yeah, there's a certain lack of, and like I'm certainly glad this exists. Like the first time I went to an extremely liberal Trans Day of Remembrance service, that just about broke me. I'm certainly glad this exists. I don't know that the queer kids are necessarily quite as.
I actually think that this is, instead of being if you're young and queer, I think this is especially for queer millennials, or, if you're queer and have had, and, have religious trauma, particularly from Christianity, or similar sort of adverse experiences, but I'm not, and so I think that's actually this is going to be more resonant if you're in, like, your 30s or 40s. You're more likely to have had the kinds of experiences that this is really going to resonate with than if you're, like, 20. I have no idea how old you are, Elle, and I don't think that, I don't think these experiences were ever universal, but
mid-20s. They're much less universal now, and
Yeah.
It's a good point. I want to go back to discussing this in more detail in the spoiler zone, because there's the sense of time and place here is good. But to haul this to the end of this particular section, I also really enjoyed the music and the audio direction.
the music's great.
That's something that I've loved with every game that this company produces. They're very good with that. Yes. Why shouldn't you play this game? Besides the list of content warnings that we're going to do in a second.
Well, it will definitely make you feel emotions.
Certainly.
You dislike
Maybe
ambiguity.
you don't want to feel emotions.
Maybe you don't like it when things aren't quite spelled out. You don't like teens being
That's true.
frankly horny in the woods in ways that teens are apt to be.
We don't like. We hope that that particular tranche of the internet is not in our audience. As a general matter.
We have to imagine, but if you are one of those people, also, this is a very short game, but I would not call it something that you can just breeze through in an afternoon. You can play through and get every ending fairly quickly, but, block out some time afterwards to have emotions.
Yeah, definitely. This isn't light. It
most certainly is not.
Particularly if you relate on a personal level to the issues that are being brought up. So content warnings, obviously.
Oh, I guess also it is very Christian.
Yes.
It is.
If you are, I guess, the kind of liberal Christian who for some reason, not for some reason, that's a little bit uncharitable. If you're the kind of Christian who is like, God can't accept gay people, well, your interpretation of your doctrine is your own business, but I don't imagine you want to have this particular, the standard interpretation of your doctrine rubbed in your face like this.
Yes. Though that was actually not what I was going to say. What I was going to say is a reason not to read this is that this is very Christian. And so if your relationship with queerness and religion is coming from a non-Christian perspective, and unlike me, you didn't grow up in the South, some of this might feel a little bit weird because it's definitely dealing with a completely different kind of, religious experience. And just even though there's some shared vocabulary, I would say.
I suppose. I mean, I didn't grow up religious at all, and I still found like a lot of the underlying themes very relatable.
I grew up in California, but there are little enclaves everywhere.
Right? No. No, there are. I was just saying that despite growing up very much not Christian, still I knew because I grew up in the South. I knew a lot of people who did have this kind of cultural and religious background. But,
who ended up at your hippie school?
And who thus ended up at my hippie school for, the queer and disabled.
Wow, great. I ended up in Seventh-day Adventist kindergarten through the end of high school. Not great. Pretty explicit.
Yeah.
Pretty explicit disavowal of evolution as a thing that happens, which, in terms of, well, I guess we'll get to the content warnings, and by God, does this game have those?
Yes, let's do the content warnings, because I think I just want to get into it at this point.
Yes.
Yes,
body horror. There's so much body horror.
Definitely. There is obviously, Christianity, abuse, violence, the violence, both emotional and physical. I think it's implied by an authority figure.
Yes. Alcohol.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Weird consent stuff. Teenagers making out and having sex again, if that bothers you in fictional depictions.
If you're like me and you went to church camp and you saw a guy, like one of the three indistinguishable guys, who's wearing like a long sleeve shirt or hoodie under his shirt with a collar on it, this will remind you of that. It may not be pleasant.
I'm sorry that I am going to be singing songs with an acoustic guitar in the edit of this.
Oh no, I'm
Yeah.
I'm aware enough of this podcast to know that the acoustic guitar comes out and it's very appropriate.
Yes, exactly. I'll be doing some camp songs as we go through this, but
Oh my.
in one sense or another. But as we go, we'll find out exactly how that is. But yes, I think that covers it. So let's dive in to the themes.
Also, bad things happening to queer vulnerable teens, depending on which ending you get.
Yes. I mean, really, all of it is bad things happening. It's just
Yes. Any ending or not ending.
bad things happen from word one, from the very first thing that happens in the game, which is Jupiter smacking your head. So let's go ahead and discuss that.
All right.
So, spoiler zone. Let's go to the spoiler zone. Hallelujah. Let's go to the spoiler zone. Hallelujah. Gosh,
Let's get to the meat.
where even to begin? There is so much in here.
We could go through the three kids.
Yeah, let's talk about the three kids.
Yeah.
There is,
so
I think, an optimal order for the three kids.
Okay, please, by all means.
Because of the nature of the game, you can't really aim for it. Because, you're going to be going, oh wow, I think these two are good together, And I think I lucked out because the very first one I ended up isolating was Jupiter.
Oh, interesting. See, I actually, because again, and I understand that this was not an accurate pitch of the game, but it was, one of the ways I heard the game described was, you get to pick two will live and one will not. And so I very specifically went, okay, which ones do I want, which one do I want to save for, do I want to make sure lives for each one? And so I feel like you can actually kind of drive for
Who
it.
did you want to save first?
I wanted to save Jupiter first.
That
So
makes a tremendous
I
amount of sense to me.
So in the first playthrough,
That really clicks. A lot of
Yes,
people,
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
also Jupiter reminded me vaguely of my high school crush, so I wanted her to live. So, who was indeed obsessed with Sailor Jupiter.
Okay, I'll give you a little recap. Sailor Jupiter is the tomboy, except she's also into baking and sewing. Her color is green and she has lightning, and that's all I have to say about that. Sailor Venus is the outgoing flirty one who used to be a superhero. Her color is gold, and the only attack of hers that Alexis can remember off the top of their head is Venus Love Me Chain. Sailor Neptune is older and a classic lipstick lesbian. She's dating Sailor Uranus, who is a classic butch. Neptune's color is aqua, her attacks are ocean themed. And that's pretty much all you need to know as far as this episode goes. Tsuki no hikari ni michibikare. I'm just gonna say that it may be impossible to talk about this without this devolving into a therapy podcast because,
I
yeah,
think that this
the
is one of these
material
things that you
is-
cannot do without it being.
exactly.
Yeah.
Good Lord. So yeah, so let's start with Jupiter then.
So I started by trying to by making sure that Jupiter didn't die, but you started by Jupiter being the one who's isolated.
Yes, and this is because I think Jupiter's the most, you look at what people think about this game, and half the things are, wait, Venus what? Venus what? I don't get it. So apparently that's a little bit difficult for people. And then Neptune is a little bit less straightforward.
Yeah, I
think Jupiter is the base case, the one on the cover, the most direct.
of the three, so sort of the basic, issue with this, with these kids is that they all have secrets, and
Right.
sort of truth is presented as kind of this violent imposition here because truth is so dangerous in the setting that they're in. And the kid who's expelled from the trio is taken over by the devil, and their secret overwhelms them basically. And Jupiter's secret is that despite the fact that she is a good girl, and is like the girl who excels at everything, she has gay thoughts, and she wants to be touched, and gay actions. And she has a little wristband that she flicks every time she has a gay thought to punish herself for having gay thoughts.
Touching. I want to touch. I want to be touched. I want to hurt. I want to be hurt.
Yes. She is isolated from the world by her desire to be pure, or not even her desire to be, by the imposed importance of purity, and is therefore like incredibly lonely.
Right. And so the thing is, it was really interesting to me because I played in what it sounds like you're saying is the worst order. I started with Venus and then Neptune and then Jupiter, and it ended up working out really well because you get to the point where, the devil gets Jupiter and you've played it the third time and they're like, wow, even the good girl among us is not immune. Mm-hmm. And it ends up working out really well if you play that one third because, you said, okay, well, this one is trans, and this one has like a lot of internal darkness that she's grappling with. And then there's this one who everyone agrees is the good girl. And even then, you still, she's still there. You can still play the game in a way that she's not safe. So it works, I think, in either order, actually.
Yeah, I think you want Neptune after Venus because one of the best details in Neptune's is, we'll get to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think that Elle's right in that Jupiter's arc and narrative is probably the most straightforward and the most easy to read. Like the symbol of her wristband is like, okay, I immediately understand that, whereas
also Venatune,
it
might be my favorite couple. I'm sorry, we were going to get down to this in shipping terms. And I have, the sources to back me up. Back before AVB redid her website, she had some of the older stuff on there. We Know the Devil was originally concepted with 4 characters. Katie, Sally. Katie is a Mars under the astronomical system and is removed from We Know the Devil to cut it down to 3. Sally is Jupiter. Isabel is Neptune. And then M is Venus. Mm-hmm. And M and Neptune have... Oh, what a dynamic.
So how would you describe the Venus?
But the author is dead.
Yes, the author is very dead.
Yes, we can come out of this with whatever we choose to take out of it, and it's like.
I like how awful they are. I like how they're taking out like Venus and Jupiter is awful in a very different way, and then Jupiter Neptune very sweet, the kind of the entry level ship, which doesn't mean it isn't good.
Of course, we're talking about levels of advancement here.
Right, but no, definitely, if you like the sort of toxic, fucked up queer relationship that I feel like is really having its moment right now in the Wizards versus Lesbians microgenre, then I agree. Venus and Neptune is a great.
If nothing else, they both have like really different approaches to cruelty, but they're both cruel, which is a real nice spice for a sort of dysfunctional relationship, particularly one with SM vibes, which I think is definitely present there. But
absolutely.
But yes, because you've both sort of said which one's your favorite, like my approach to this is like, Neptune is who I feel like I'm the closest to as a person. Jupiter is the one that I'm closest to as somebody who I would want to be with. And then there's Venus, who is like... Venus is coded... Actually, I want to kind of move on to Venus real quick because like it's...
Let's go to Venus. Great.
Yeah. Venus, I think, is the most interesting of the 3. So.
Yeah, because like Venus is, there's like the obvious thing, which is that Venus is trans, right?
Yeah.
But then you get into, but it's not just like Venus's character is that she is trans. It's, Venus
is an awful little shit.
Venus is like.
Is an awful little. Venus is like weaponized being wounded at everybody.
Yes.
Yes. Venus also, I think, is autism coded. Like,
Good at knots, good at
Yeah, I think that's
radios,
correct.
not good at anything else.
Yeah, like very.
Well, if there's anything else he hasn't shown us, I have like this whole game like deeply carved into my brain.
Right, exactly. But
As you do when you play it when you are in a position very similar to Venus's.
yeah. But yeah, no, Venus. I think that it's sort of ambiguous as to what extent Venus doesn't realize that he's being a little shit, or she rather, and like.
Oh, I think I think certainly by the end of the game she does, because the other two are both like you. I think Venus has to know,
Venus
because everybody.
knows, for sure.
I feel like she really does. I mean, certainly by the end of the game she has to know, because it's been made abundantly clear to her by her friends. But when it is made abundantly clear to her by her friends, she isn't like, "What do you mean?" She's just like, "Yeah, you're right."
Yes, but there is a certain amount. There's a certain degree of plausible deniability there in like being outside. There's like there. This is all, you know, sort of. If you generalize this game to the greatest extent, it's about outgroup, right?
Right.
And
Who's
like,
in, who's the devil?
so yes, Group West is the outgroup within the camp, and we're working to see who the outgroup person is within Group West. And all three of the members of Group West can be outgrouped for various different reasons, which are this is the sort of one of the resonances with the devil figure. And like, and Venus is sort of has the most ways of being othered, because, you know, obviously she doesn't fit in with the gender expectations that are being, you know, placed on her, but she also doesn't fit in with, she also has a problem with just being friends with people and with, you know, basic, you know, concepts of trust and community, in a way that Jupiter and Neptune don't.
A thing that Venus kind of has that doesn't really get talked about that much is Venus is the one who's always bringing the captain up. You know, Venus is the one with the, oh, you know, he doesn't like it when people try to get on his good side stuff around the captain. Jupiter has similar stuff, but, oh, you know, we should call the captain in, which is...
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Stuff around responsibility.
There is like this horrible internalized appeal to authority that you get as the nerd as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because it can be a way to safeguard yourself against your peers, even if the authority figure is also horrible. And which, in my case, is like buried deep enough that I still don't have it entirely out of me. Yeah, no, I think that I feel, you know, when I say like Neptune is the one that I feel the closest to, it's like there is something in Venus which I recognize and despise.
Oh, don't worry. You know? Venus absolutely hates herself, as that's a...
Well, they all do.
But like...
Right, but they all hate,
I mean,
they all hate
that's...
themselves, and part of the thing is that, again, Venus has learned to, I feel like, take that self-hatred and use it as a weapon. I mean, they all, I guess, have weaponized their self-hatred in different ways, but Venus does so in a way that makes it so that, you know, she obviously hates herself, and if you agree with her, then she uses that to make you feel worse.
Agreed.
Yep.
There's also this
Which
thing
is
where,
one of the reasons why I think she's the most interesting. You know, I think she's the most interesting of the three. They're all pretty interesting, but her dynamic is the one that I wanted. Her interactions were the ones I wanted to like reread the most, because there really are multiple levels going on.
Agreed. There's also this thing where Neptune and Jupiter use Venus as a staging ground.
Yes, truth or dare.
Or
Yes!
like a neutral space within which to act things out, because Venus is safe in a certain way.
Yeah, you know, we can have the thing that we want. Or Neptune is like, you know, I can have the thing that I want, being a little more public. If we do it, you know, in a contained space, and I can like, I can play with fire here. You know, I can be like, hey, well, who do you like, Jupiter? You know, I can set this up by using Venus as a guy, as a prop.
Yeah, there's a way in which both Jupiter and Neptune treat Venus as if he fundamentally does not matter. like almost as if she's not there in some cases, which also sort of dovetails with the autism bit. I mean, perhaps the most damning character moment for Venus is the idea that she wants to be a Hufflepuff, but is actually a Slytherin. Like, that's possibly the worst combination of things that a person can be. But
at the time, this was a really good reference. This was how people talked. This was how people were.
Right. Yeah.
This came out far before we knew about J.K. Rowling. Anyway, they may not have known, but I did. Soon as I read the epilogue, it was so goddamn heterosexual. I knew only bad things would come.
No, but honestly, one of the things I really enjoy about this game is what, like, a period piece it is. Mm-hmm. This game really captures the sort of, I feel like it has a really strong sort of late 90s aughts feel to it. And part of that is that you go back and play it and you go, oh yes, back when Harry Potter references might be annoying, but like weren't a worrying flag.
Yeah, no, I wanted to talk about the sort of the time setting, because it does feel the most like late 90s to me, but also we didn't have cell phones. So,
right.
There's a little bit of bleed there, but or most of us didn't anyway. But anyway, Neptune. So Neptune is the bad girl.
Yes.
And she's the scary one. And she is full of liquid, being Neptune.
Sometimes it's like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very difficult for her to keep what is inside her. How do you think of the water inside Neptune? Like, what does that represent to you? Either of you?
I mean, I thought for me a big part of Neptune's arc, or Neptune's character, is that she's got all of these thoughts, because they've all got bad thoughts inside of them, or what, they're told are bad thoughts. But the thing about Neptune's is that a lot of them, she wants to be mean to people. And so I think water works really well because, it could be like poison or sludge or pollution. But, also, if you get down to it, she's mostly just a teen having teen angst. And so it's actually just water in the end. So I thought that metaphor worked really well for her, actually.
Elle, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, water's good for overflowing. Water's really symbolically resonant. The feeling of like, I don't feel like I'm going to, catch fire, or there isn't really even an earth, if we're going to go with classical metaphor, or earthquakes, I guess. It's water. The idea that water will leave the body in ways that you don't want it to.
That makes sense to me.
Right, she's just like, her emotions are just like leaking out of her, and she doesn't like it.
Yeah, Neptune's sort of role in the social dynamic is she's sort of the one who takes the Mrs. Senko approach, if we want to call back to Nightbird's Feather. Is like she wants to cut through the bullshit and wield the truth in a really sort of violent and like cruel way to try to get, she is aiming for something, but she also, I think, does not actually by herself believe that anything can be accomplished.
Yeah. This is presumably why she's at camp.
Yeah.
Jupiter goes because her mom makes her go. Venus goes because that's the kind of sweet little boy that people say slurs about. And Neptune,
yeah, exactly,
goes presumably, I don't know how much this is hinted at, but I've always felt like she goes deliberately. She's like, well, I want to get this over with.
Yeah, it's like, this is obviously where I'm heading.
Yeah, I'll get it over with, I'll get it killed,
Yeah.
I'll be fine.
Or possibly either that or she also strikes me as somebody who's like, yes, fine, just send me to the reform camp. I'm going to screw up and get sent there eventually. Let's just, cut the bullshit and jump straight to it. No point in waiting to be forced to go. I might as well just go.
Yes. Yeah. So let's talk briefly about a couple of themes here, and one that dovetails nicely with the Wizards versus Lesbian podcast in general is we say all the time that we have a lot of books where queer desire is the revolutionary moment, or the revolutionary force, and sometimes we do stories where queer desire is demonstrated to not be the revolutionary force enough by itself, but if you're poly, that could be the revolutionary force.
Right.
And
or if
this,
you're queer
I think,
and autistic, or
if you're trans, oh god, it's gonna come for trans women next. I'm not looking forward to that. It's already starting to happen. Please take us out of the spotlight. I don't. Please.
Yeah,
the way toward being a marketable demographic is through there, I'm afraid, and capitalism does what it does. But yes,
can't we just skip over the next 20 or so years and go right to hating on poly people? Republicans, please.
I mean, some people are already there, but the point being that we do not actually. There's an actual revolution here, which is that if you get the secret ending and don't leave out, and if you don't be trans excluding, and if you also
right.
don't exclude any of the other people for the various other reasons that you could, if you don't exclude the evil lesbian or the horny lesbian, then what you end up with is
evil, horny, and trans inclusive. The three things you need.
Yeah.
No, but yes, but also it's very literally, if you refuse to dehumanize anybody, you can get the happy ending.
Yeah.
That's what the devil is.
If you understand that you're all dehumanized anyway.
Yes, because the revolution here is described as leaving your body, which this is a big theme in media by and about trans people, of course, is
Heaven Will Be Mine does get into this. The person who wants to leave the body and the other two. A big part of this, relating between people who are trans and people who are not, is trans women are the ones in Heaven Will Be Mine with the attachment to their bodies.
That's very interesting, yeah, because it definitely cuts both ways. Gender as a point to reach and is by necessity embodied. The thing that is said about Venus in this book is that her kindness is full of want.
Yeah.
That, she loves her friends, but there is in that love always the desire to be them, or to be like them, or to, the game doesn't actually specify what that yawning thing is, except in the form of a seraphim,
both,
at the end. Exactly. And so, yeah, no, there is that tension there between, what does that revolution look like? But it definitely does fall on, to achieve revolution, we can no longer monster anybody. There cannot be an outgroup, and that includes the devil, him or her or themself. And the devil here is characterized as a, it's sort of Lilith almost.
Yeah, the devil gets different pronouns depending on who refers to the devil.
But the devil is characterized as the parent of these particular weird kids. These kids came from the devil and have to recognize that. It's the same kind of devil as the devil in the best ever death metal band out of Denton, which I included a cover of in a recent episode. Hail Satan means I refuse to go along, rather than I want to sacrifice goats. Although, porque no los dos. So there's that revolutionary thing, but there's also, I think, the what they're revolting against in this specific thing. Like you said, it's not just like, all queer people or all non-conforming people. It is specifically what this camp is for is using children as soldiers, right?
Right.
Not even as soldiers, using children to, mostly metaphorically, but also kind of physically, beat the devil out of other children.
Yeah. It's using children as your staging ground for your war against the devil.
Yes. And this is a theme that I think is perennial and is always underrepresented everywhere in media, because it's just the reality of it is around us is like, and particularly as we get to things like where we're trying to roll back child labor laws right now. And
my political allegiance is and always will be fundamentally to the children.
Won't somebody think of the children? No, actually think of the children. Actually think of what we're doing to them. Actually ask them what they want. Right, exactly. It's about what you can do with kids because they're because they don't have the power to resist you. What you can do in the school.
This is my high school existed specifically because the principal believed that minors who did not have the ability to vote were thus one of the great oppressed classes of America and deserved a social justice training school.
And she was right.
Yeah, no, this game would have been so popular at my high school if like visual novels that you could download over the internet were a thing back then.
But yeah, no, I think that like there is like this creeping militarism in sort of like Jesus camp, and everywhere else in the culture where it's on the one level like it's this dehumanizing, but on the other level it's just you can take God and the devil out of the equation entirely, and it's all about following orders, and God is like the Laurie Anderson, dad on the radio, God is the voice reading the
God
news.
is consensus.
God is the voice, predicting the weather, right? And so, if you don't know who Laurie Anderson is, I'm going to start with Sharky's Day. We do so much in this society to, as you said, like Alexis, Neptune is a teenager and is having normal teenage feelings, but
right.
we do so much in this society to ridicule those feelings and to belittle and minimize those feelings and to say, well, that instinct to disobey is just a phase that you're going to have to get over in order to become like a human being in the way that this society recognizes it.
Right.
And I think part of this, the sort of the instinct toward revolution has to be resisting that, What were you going to say, Al?
Heavenly Mind, yet again, does also, like, the idea of the kids whose gravity is not fully formed, those pilots who remain in space, being kind of permanently stunted as a result.
Yeah, I'll give a brief summary for Alexis. Like, Heaven Will Be Mine is also a game where you are pulling in three different directions, and it's about essentially, humanity sticking to Earth and being subject to Earth gravity, and gravity is culture. It's like human culture creates gravity in this, and then there are the weirdo exoplanet people whose champion is a sort of the trans woman's sort of ultimate goal of being a trans woman, who want to go out into the weirdness. And then there are the people who want to try to figure out a third path, but in secret basically want to start a Cold War again because there needs to be an enemy. And so they're trying to, keep the... But anyway, yes.
Yeah, I can see where the Gundam actually it sounds a little bit like Gunbuster too.
There's Gunbuster. There's a little bit of. I haven't gotten through Gunbuster yet. There's a little bit of Macross. Lots of.
Macross I've watched lots of.
What a thing that is vexingly close to being good.
Yes. One of the things. So what I was going to say though, what I was going to say is that this is another thing that really ties into our point in the Nightbird's Feather, that these are all stories about making kids heroes, and and on the one hand, like these kids are getting co-opted into this sort of spiritual warfare type thing, but it is still arguing that liberation is going to come from these kids having to still be the heroes.
That is true.
Nobody else will do it for them.
Yeah.
Which, that's the world that this game exists in. That's the world that these kids live in. That's the world that I was in at the time that I played this game in 2018. And, deeply objectionable circumstances, shall we say.
So that's fair. So I guess the difference is there's a real difference between forcing kids to be heroes in whatever you think are your priorities versus kids having to be their own heroes. But this is a game made by adults, and that is still sort of saying that revolution will have to come from kids. And it makes me wonder, how much we're putting on, the next generation is going to fix all of our problems.
True love is possible only in the next world, says people who want to abandon doing anything about the world we're in. But you can wreak havoc on the middle class. That's fine. From your lived perspective, Alexis, it's like, you had the adult who was like, I'm going to turn around and try to, create a space for kids where they can... you just called it like a training camp for social justice,
Right, and I was being
like
somewhat tongue-in-cheek.
Camp,
Right, no, I was being somewhat tongue-in-cheek, and, to some degree, part of the point of my school was the idea that, you can't rely on adults to save you. You have to develop the skills to save yourself and then do whatever it is you choose to do with them. And I mean, I think also it being a period, because it feels like a period piece, even though they do have cell phones, it does feel a little bit less like it's, the next generation is going to, the next generation is how it will finally give us liberation from all of the prejudices of the past.
And Elle, I knew you were going to say something as well. I want to.
Oh yeah.
But what I want to say is that I don't think it's necessarily saying kids are going to have to, the responsibility for changing the world is on the kids. Like for me, when I see this, I don't, I'm 40 years old, and when I look at this, and like this is about kids
it's
from my
hard
childhood
to
age,
relate to the teens hanging out in the cabin, and this might again just be a factor of the ways that I don't want to be the kind of trans woman who is like, I'm actually like 10 years younger than I really am, which that's not a good look. But also,
I know it's not a good look, but I think
actually, Elle, I think that's a really good point, that part of this, this is a game, it was written by an adult, but that part of this, it isn't so much about putting things on the next generation. To some degree, I think it is about working through all the internalized stuff one had to deal with when one was 18. And that is, you're right, that's a fundamental difference. And I
there's not the idea is that it's still going to suck, but it's not something offloaded, if that makes sense.
Right, well, because it's about coming to terms with your younger self and being, perhaps in some ways, being the person that your younger self needed internally.
Yeah, I mean, and not just for the sake of younger people, but also for your own sake, because
right, exactly.
You look at this, and this is a story of people who were put in, they were made into bonsai kittens, right? Or that's what this is trying to do to them. Like they're having their growth stunted in a very specific way in order to make them more useful to the camp counselor and to the culture that he represents. And it's like what I think it invites you to do is not to just be like, well, look at these kids. It's more to be like, think about the way that I was grown. You know, what was I pushing against? What is in me that I could still access despite that, rather, and not like, you don't have to go 100% neotenous and be like, well, actually, I'm only 23 years old. But, but I do think that it's actually a really good exercise for adults. And, another thing that we're pushed away from by this contempt for that teenage rebellion, to be like, actually, what can I push against now? What are these boundaries? Are they real? That sort of thing.
Not really, beyond what's been said. It's
Okay.
I have a lot to say about this game. I don't know if I have a lot to say about this particular demographic. The idea of who's aiming it, the idea of who's, who it's targeted for. The author is dead.
Yeah. Why don't you take us to our next point of discussion then?
Let's see, what have I got on my little list? God, the devil. We were doing themes, right?
Yes.
Corruption, God, power, and who has it and who doesn't, and the ways that changes, like, their internal interactions. You said SM earlier, and that's certainly there, but it's all, the ways that, like, every single little individual interaction between them kind of, like, well, it obviously doesn't literally tip the next one, but these very complicated, like, webs between them.
Yeah, I mean, there's power exchange, and then there's being a teenager trying to be in a friend group, where everybody is constantly jockeying to be top dog, almost by instinct, or not, as the case may be. I mean, we've talked about this, like, people who grow up under, like, authoritarian power structures have a really hard time trusting one another, because because the truth about themselves is so dangerous, and because Venus may decide to call in the camp counselor,
Right.
And it's like the and it's sort of like one of the big things that Neptune contributes to this dynamic is just the complete fearlessness that she exhibits is just sort of creates this space where the other two can make little essays, which I think is very important and is probably super tied to that part of herself that she hates, I do want to say that, like, my favorite sort of little joke in this game, I love the idea that the camp counselor made all of these horrible cabins and the little sheds that are, like, specially themed for the kids, because it implies that the camp counselor is, like, this sort of end of the world Akio-esque, like, maniacal, obsessor and panopticon haver over teens, and like,
he's not.
Right,
the idea
camp
of
counselor is
that,
our wizard figure.
Right, exactly. But you do get those little sheds who somebody must have set up.
Probably every so often they built one for every few generations, or every few sets of kids who came through or whatever, and now they're all just kind of, the old ones are just kind of lying there. But, the kind of mythic camp counselor who represents the guy who built all of those is very much being drawn on by the actual guy who probably didn't build any of them. Or having that read into
right,
him.
The actual camp counselor is like 20 or something.
And his head is a thumb.
Right. Yes,
Yes.
That's also very cute. That, like, the normies they barely bother to draw the normies. They don't matter. But but still, despite the fact that these were not, textually constructed specifically for them, Venus and Jupiter still get sheds that are specifically for them. In that Venus gets the shed that is just 3 sizes too small, and and Venus exists within it as Venus exists within her cramped body, within her body that is trying to contain this light,
or her body that is too big. Or that makes her feel too big,
Yes.
Either or.
It's
work.
It's the mismatch, right?
Yeah.
And then Jupiter gets the one where there's literally a Yuri cabinet full of lilies, which she destroys just by putting her hand on it.
Right. Yeah. That's just how the world works.
That.
Sometimes you walk in and the magical realism has successfully triggered or whatever, and then you see the beautiful little Yuri cabinet full of lilies, and then you break it, because that's how it goes.
Yes. So I really did appreciate that.
I have a personal favorite joke for this game, and it's Neptune's ending. It's the fact that Neptune kind of drizzles the ichor in Venus's mouth, which is funny if you have very specific context. Which some of our viewers can probably guess, and some the rest of our viewers don't need to know about, because that's embarrassing and not the sort of thing that we really need to be discussing on this sort of podcast.
I see. Well, I will not make an explanatory jingle then. Okay, I lied. Let me explain it. It's about liquid as a feminine medium, a medium of transformation, a medium of corruption, and the layer of Venus being blinded, and therefore having to lean on Jupiter to repudiate Neptune. It's about consumption of Neptune's anger, and the poisoning that entails. So it's not just a cum joke. Do we have any other things about this game that we want to discuss before we wrap it up?
Well, we haven't really talked about the secret ending much.
Oh, okay.
We sort of talked around it, but we haven't talked about it.
So yes, in the secret ending, they all sort of become transhuman in a sort of way. They become monsters.
They become the monsters that they are in each of their bad endings, but because they're all together and can balance each other out, it's a happy liberatory monsterdom.
Yes. And are these monsters related to their Sailor Scouts in a particular way?
Elemental affinities are related. Neptune has the water, Venus has the light and the wiggling radio. Sailor Venus, and then Jupiter has. I guess Sailor Jupiter punches things.
The storm.
She doesn't have a.
Well, Sailor Jupiter punches things, but no, she also has the storm, and Jupiter has a lot of lightning-based powers in the. She has whole little lightning antenna and everything, and a lot of how they describe Jupiter in this game is about is using storm imagery, Jupiter, the red spot of Jupiter, which is a storm.
It's her little red patch on her shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
There are these are 3 ways to let loose things that you're desperately trying to sublimate or to repress, which is the leaking, the exploding, and the transcending.
And then they take over. And then they take over the camp and make it, camp for all evil reject queer girls.
Yes. The implication is that they fight and then seduce in one way or another every other member of the camp, and presumably this is the first step in world domination, one might think, or at least if not world domination, then at least their hope is that they will attract more curious normies who want to see what's going on at Devil Camp.
In the water.
Neptune is going to put her goo in the water supply, and we will see what happens. It's psychosexual but not explicit, and it's political but fanciful, and it's that kind of view of the post-revolution that is dreamlike enough to be plausible, because it can mean a lot of different things depending on what you want it to mean. But also does suggest that there will be blood.
And they throw their lot in with the devil.
Yes, which seems
Yeah,
fine.
I mean, the devil is not,
No.
evil. Or, the devil's not bad, is maybe a better way to.
Hail Satan!
Right. Well, this is this is very much this is what I mean by this is very Christian. This is a very, pushing back against Christianity kind of devil.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is a game that takes place in a Christian summer camp where you send your kids because they're gay.
Exactly.
It comes with the territory.
Yeah. This is the social justice Satanists.
Right. Which, boy, did I go to a lot of I went to school with a lot of those.
Yeah, no, I remember Damien, which was his real name,
Satanist.
funnily enough.
Damien, though, was not a Satanist. Damien is just a pagan.
Yeah, 6 and 1, half a dozen of the other. No, I understand. But playing this game, I realized that I wrote a play in which God is on the radio, and I desperately want to know whether I unconsciously stole it from this or whether I played this game after that. But I'll just say that it's all Laurie Anderson coming through in some way or another.
Heroes of the Fourth Turning has the noise, which quite a lot in that is drawing on the same stuff as stuff in this and arrives at very similar places.
The Heroes of the Fourth Turning is a contemporary play, which is part, I guess, of the tradition of trying to understand people who want to kill you. It was written by a Catholic intellectual and got good reviews from across the political spectrum, which means it's probably shit. Well, I think that we are our brains and our bodies are both melting here. So do we have
Actually,
any,
I have
any
one
final
other
thoughts
note.
or notes?
Yeah, which is I really like the art and aesthetic design in general, both because it's interesting, but also because it very much looks like some high schoolers' anime OCs.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Which I think is a really good design choice. The character design works really well for evoking the mood.
It's my second favorite thing about both We Know the Devil and Heaven Will Be Mine is the character designs. My first favorite thing being the sound design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just very stylish game all around.
Yes. All right. I'm gonna end it here because I'm dying.
Okay.
We do not want you to die.
All right. Thank you for coming and talking with us about this game, Elle. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it too.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I like it enough that I don't even know if like is the right word. I hadn't touched it for about a year at least before this, and it's a way to it's so just directly. I played it with an ex-Mormon lesbian at 1 a.m. while slightly tipsy, which is a very good way to play We Know the Devil.
Yes, that
Yes,
that sounds
I can
exactly
imagine.
right. This I want to go back and I'll put in the why you may or may not want to play this game. I will add I hope this doesn't awaken anything in me jingle, because it is the sort of thing that you may accidentally find formative.
I think there are worse things.
Which is usually a sign of good art.
Yeah.
Yep.
Though you never know. I've definitely known people who've made extremely bad books like a cornerstone of their personality.
Yeah, but
We only care about things awakening things in people when they have good taste and are people that we care about, and those two things are kind of the same thing, even if they probably shouldn't be.
Maybe I'll say if you're lucky, this might awaken something in you.
I would say
All
that,
right.
yes, if this awakens something in you, that's not a bad thing.
Not at all. All right. I'm going to continue my melting into a puddle of goo.
All right.
Much like Neptune.
Enjoy going back to where there's air conditioning.
Oh my God, yes. All right. Thank you both.
All right. Thank you, Elle, for joining us.
Yeah, it's been good.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sun's going down like a big bald head. Disappearing behind the boulevard. It's Sharky's night. Yeah, it's Sharky's night tonight. And the manager says, Shark? He's not at his desk right now. Can I take a message? And Sharky says, Hey, Kimasabi. Long time no see. He says, Hey, sport. You connect the dots. You pick up the pieces. He says, You know, I can see two tiny pictures of myself, and there's one in each of your eyes. And they're doing everything I do. Every time I light up a cigarette, they light up theirs. I take a drink and I look in and they're drinking too. It's driving me crazy. It's driving me nuts. Sharky says, deep in the heart of darkest America, home of the brave, he says, listen to my heart beats. Paging Mr. Shark. White courtesy telephone, please.